In 2006, we lost Ronnie Sox of the famous Sox and Martin racing team. It was a shock to the Mopar world, and we all realized at that moment that we were not going to have our heroes around forever. Soon wrote an editorial in Mopar Collector's Guide referencing how we needed to do a Hall of Fame for the Mopar heroes that we grew up with, to preserve Mopar history for the future generations. As the years went by, I ran into a good friend of mine, Jim Kramer, at a show, and he asked me when I was going to do a Mopar Hall of Fame. I must have looked at him with a yeah right look in my eyes. He proceeded to say, "If you don't do it, no one else will." In my heart of hearts, I knew he was right, so in 2011 I began lining up sponsors and critical people to help me pull something together that the entire Mopar community could be proud of. What we ended up with was a number of Hall of Fame induction dinners that were held Saturday night of each Chrysler's at Carlisle event from 2012 until 2018. The Mopar Hall of Fame will go forward each preceding year in the pages of Mopar Collector's Guide magazine. This is one of those recordings made on one of those incredible nights at the Mopar Hall of Fame at Chrysler's at Carlisle.
Thank you. This is the first time I've been to this event. It's a wonderful event. I've really enjoyed myself this evening. I was just asked yesterday morning to come up and do this acceptance, and so I said to him, you know, I came here to work a show, so I don't even own a long pair of pants. They said, that's okay, come anyhow, so here I am. I know it's getting late, and I know everybody's a little bit tired, so I'll try to make this short and sweet. But before I get started, I got one little story I want to tell you about this weekend. As many of you probably know, we've got a booth over in the Expo Center at the Hurst Nationals, and it's got a table spread with a big red Hurst H on the front of it, and then parked right next to us is the Hurst Hemi under glass. An interesting thing happened earlier today. I had a young man come in, not a young man, he was a middle-aged man, I would say, and he comes up to me and he says, hey, you know what? He says, I bought this beautiful die-cast replica of the Hurst Hemi under glass. He said, Linda Vaughn signed it for me, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd sign it too. I said, sure, I'd be happy to. So he hands it to me, and I sign it, hand it back to him. He takes it, and he looks at it, kind of looks at me, and he looks at it again. He says, what does this say? I said, it says Nate Shelton, Hurst president. He says, who the hell's Nate Shelton? I thought you were Bob Riggle. Anyhow, that's the way it goes sometimes. In the late 60s, through the 70s, and even into the 80s, you couldn't go to a drag strip in this country where you wouldn't see some of these really cool Hemi Super Stock cars. The Hurst Hemi Darts and the Hurst Hemi Cudas, they're just iconic. Not only were they there, but they were winning almost every class they were involved in, and they were winning all their brackets. They are truly legendary cars. We've done this program. This was one of the early programs that Hurst did with Chrysler. There were some other projects, and we've done a lot of projects since then. There was naturally the Hurst pistol grip shifters, the Hurst Chrysler 300H, which was a pretty neat project. In 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, we built the Hurst Hemi Challengers again. We built about 150 of those cars, as well as some Hurst Hemi Vipers. They were beautiful cars. We had a great time doing that. We have worked on several drag pack programs with Chrysler and built a lot of different kinds of shifters and that type of things for many of the programs that they have. And then today, even Larry Weiner and the Hurst Heritage Series cars are being built by the Grand Spalding Sport people. So there's always been a big, really tight relationship there with Chrysler, and we've always really enjoyed that relationship. And we hope that going forward, there's going to be many, many more, and I think there will be. I just don't think that anything that we've done through all the years with Hurst is iconic and as legendary as these Hurst Hemi Darts and Hurst Hemi Cudas. These are tremendous cars. So like I said, I'm going to keep this short and sweet tonight. So on behalf of the Hurst Corporation, all the Hurst employees, and all the great racers that own these cars and still own these cars today. Most of the cars, by the way, that you see now, the drag strips, are clones because these cars have become so valuable that, you know, most of the people won't take them out and try risk racing them anymore. So again, on behalf of Hurst and Hurst Corporation, Hurst employees, and all the guys that own these cars, I want to thank you for this great honor this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. One of our guests out there, and a good friend of mine, David Akeem, came up with a letter. I don't know where he stole it from, but he came up and he gave it to Herb today, and this is a great piece. So Herb, take it away.
I had never seen this until today. I was kind of a part of it, but I'd never seen it. This letter was written by Mr. Dick Maxwell. Mr. Maxwell, as most of you know, was the head of the Chrysler Race Group. He's the one that coordinated all this stuff. He made things happen. Him and people like Tom Hoover are the reason we're here tonight. Unfortunately, we've lost both of them, which is sad. But this letter is addressed to W.E. Desmuke. Now, the people my age all know who that was. That was Farmer Desmuke, the NHRA tech guru. He's the guy you had to get through tech with. Dear Farmer, we thought we would give you a quick rundown on our proposed 68 Superstock B race cars. We're planning to build Hemi-powered Barracudas and Darts business coupes. The engine will have iron heads, 12.5-to-1 compression pistons, optional ram and inline intake. The inline never happened. 2 Holley Model 4160 list 3175 carburetors, aluminum water pump housings, slip fans. The manual transmission cars will be equipped with scatter shield type clutches housings and high burst speed clutches and flywheels. All cars will be equipped with Dana axles and aircraft front brakes. Thank goodness they did not put the aircraft front brakes on them, because at the tracks that I raced at, we would have been killed down in the south. The bodies will probably be Barracuda fastbacks and Dart 2-doors. We will use 2 bucket seats, business coupe interior with 8-inch Kim Gore side glass, which exploded like dynamite a lot of times. We will delete heaters and all sealer and sound deadener. We will utilize 6-cylinder front suspension members and delay sway bars. The rear suspension will be special heavy duty and will require reinforced rear body and frame structure. We will incorporate 1/8-inch gas tank shields. Batteries will be trunk mounted. Lightweight steel doors are used in conjunction with fiberglass front fenders, bumper, grille panels, and lift-off hoods. The grille will be standard material. The rear quarter panel wheel cutouts will have to be modified for 10-inch tires. We anticipate the shipping weight to be in the neighborhood of 3,100 pounds. We expect this to be quite a race car. We would appreciate any comments you have regarding these cars. To the best of our knowledge, we are within the current rule structure. If you have any changes to recommend, please notify us promptly, as we're starting our parts procurement program. We will submit more detailed specs when our plans are finished. Sincerely, R.E. Maxwell. That was the start of the 68 Hemi Darts and Cudas. And that is the car, the 65 cars started changing the world of drag racing. The 68 cars really changed it. That's what brought about the pro stock situation. AHRA actually had a heads-up 3,000-pound pro stock type class before NHRA did. I loved it because I won the points championship in it and won a whole lot of money doing it. But then pro stock came along in 1970, and that changed the whole world of the heads-up, first man to the finish line type racing. And I had the pleasure of being a big part of that with the Sox and Martin team. But we found this letter. David found it. I had never seen it, and I just thought it would be really neat to read it. So thank you all very much. We have really enjoyed this. Rob will finish up.
Yep, we have got one more guy coming up that he is the keeper of the secrets for all of the 68 Superstock cars, Mark Janicki.
Okay. All right, when they built the 68 Superstock cars, they were built to win races. I don't know that they thought they would be still waiting 50 years later. There. Back in '67, when the race group got together to plan the Superstock cars for '68, Dick Maxwell suggested the A-body cars. Traditionally, they'd use a B-body car with the Hemi lightweight parts, but this year they tried something different. There was a threat of a camera engine in a Mustang, and NHRA had adjusted the classes so that Superstock A was opened up for the Mustang. Maxwell felt that the Hemi A-body would fit right at the top of the Superstock B class and provide real good exposure for the company, basically. The design requirements for the car, they had to beat the Superstock B record of 1150 with a 65 Dodge, or 130 miles an hour. They contacted they suggested a young engineer named Bob Terozzi. Terozzi did some calculations, and they went forward, assuming that they were going to be able to meet that speed. As we've seen before, this Tom Tiganelli in the mule car. I've got to take a break here. Okay. Basically what they were going to do is, Herb had gone through, they were used lightweight parts on the car to meet the speeds that they were going to run. They're using the same engine combination as they were using pretty much in the 64.5 cars, but the cars were about 200 pounds lighter, or a little bit more than 200 pounds lighter. Somewhere along the line, they decided that the cars were not going to be street legal. They were going to put the cars in primer and let the racers paint them. Hurst was chosen to modify the cars. The cars were towed over to Hurst. And in a second shift, I think actually Tom Tiganelli might have helped put some of these cars together as well. The wheel wells were modified, rear ends were changed, lightweight parts were installed, and the Hemi engines, of course. Racers picked the cars up either at Hurst or at Chrysler. Basically, they look like this here with a gel coat front end, and the cars were in primer. They either picked them up at Hurst or Chrysler, or they were delivered to their local dealership. The first race the cars were legal for was the '68 Spring Nationals in Englishtown, New Jersey. There were a lot of the '68 cars that showed up, as you can see. It looked like it was going to be an all '68 final. Ronnie Sox worked his way through the field. Don Grother worked his way through the field. Unfortunately, Ronnie had his tire spin off the rim, and as Herb may know this, he hopped in the '67 car that I think Herb was driving. Unfortunately, in the final, both cars broke out. They went too fast, and the Barracuda lost. Ronnie won in the '67 car. At the Superstock Nationals, Dick Landy won modified production. In the finals, once again, Bill Stiles went to the finals, went too fast, and lost. At Indy, the car that finally broke through was Varlin Vanke. There was a lot of sandbagging going on at this race because the cars qualified in the 12s. They were capable of running in the 10-second range. Some of the drivers were getting a little upset with the handicap racing where if they went too fast, they lost. And as Herb mentioned before, they advocated for a heads-up Superstock program, which some of the classes implemented in late '69. And in 1970, NHRA went to the Pro Stock class. A lot of the '68 cars ran in Pro Stock, and a lot of the big names used the '68 cars until their '70 cars were done. Other cars like Melvin Yo's car, they had changed over with a '70 front end and '70 rear end on them. There was a 2-year rule on the Pro Stock cars, so they kind of updated those. After a lot of the big racers went to Pro Stock, Judy Lilly, Ron Mancini, and John Tedder carried on with a lot of the Chrysler R&D program. Some of the cars ran in modified production. This car here held several national records in modified production and actually in C-gas. Some of the cars went back to bracket cars. Later in the later 70s, some of those parts were starting to dry up. There wasn't a lot of research and development going on in the Hemi. So a lot of those cars were actually going back to a bracket car. Some exceptions were like Steve Bagwell's team. He ran a number of cars, 68 cars that were very successful in the late 70s, early 80s. DeFrank and Cohen did the same. Some of the cars still soldiered on there through the 80s, like Eddie Smith's car here. In the later 70s, or later 80s, early 90s, there was NHRA changed some rules. They allowed some head porting and some aftermarket style intake manifolds. And a guy, Ray Barton, applied some of the newer technology to the Hemis, and the power levels increased and performance increased, and they started to become competitive again in super stock. Oops. Another car here, Chuck Camella's car. He's owned this car since day one, since 1968. He's been racing it for 50 years. But like I said, with the Barton's engines, they became competitive. Other engine builders got involved, such as Charlie Westcott and Harry Holton, and it got very competitive. The Hemi shootout became one of a lot of people would go down there to see just the Hemi shootout because it was so competitive. A lot of these cars now have fallen into collectors' hands. The prices have gone up, so there's fewer and fewer of them racing today of original cars, but I don't think that there's any other car that has won its own class for 50 years. These cars have been in their own class in Superstock B, Superstock A Automatic, or Superstock A, and Superstock AH. Every year that they've competed, those cars have won class at the U.S. Nationals. I don't know if there's another car that's been done with before. But just wanted to do a brief history, and I thank everybody for coming. And
if you like this video, please smash the like button. And if you want to see more videos like this one online, hit the subscribe to Mopar TV button. It's totally free. Also, if you'd like to support the Mopar Hall of Fame and vote for future inductees, go to MoparCollectorsGuide.com and subscribe to the only Mopar magazine that matters.